Why, hello there. It's me, Jeremy, your favorite bald dude telling you about Standard and Strange, a store and a brand with simple rules. Sell clothes they themselves would wear, manufacture it ethically, and build it to last. From boots made in Oregon to loop wheel garments made in Japan, find all the best clothes for your wardrobe at Standard and Strange. StandardandStrange.com. Hey folks, you're listening to Blammo. My name is Jeremy Kirkland, and I am still cold. I actually still even have a cold. So I'm cold, and I got a cold, whatever. So if my voice doesn't sound as sultry as you're used to, I don't know. It's tough out there. It's we're all sick. We're all dealing with it. Everyone's still in that New Year vibe. The whole, I'm gonna do something different. Like, this is the year that I do the thing. Well, I did. I got rid of not one, but two folks, 2 giant bags of clothes. I had my buddy Jeff Hilliard in town not too long ago. You probably know him. He's in the Slack. I don't know, whatever. Everyone knows Jay Hilla. But I had to ask him for a bit of an intervention on my my hoarding. Like, I mean, does anyone else have this problem? Like, I have a lot of clothes. I have a lot of stuff, a lot of clothes, a lot of things that are important to me. They're my baseball cards. I got suits, I got jackets and shoes and sweaters. And, it's just, I don't know. You get some stuff and you keep thinking you're going to use it, or you're going to wear it. You're going to wear it more, or you're going to fit into it later. Maybe you're going to go back to this style. Like, I have to sit and look in the mirror. Because in my case, some of this stuff that I had, it was sitting for 4 years. I was like, what the hell am I doing? Jeff was like, wait, dude, you haven't worn this in 4 years? Hey man, it's gone, buddy. And I was like, damn it. So I did it. I purged. I got rid of a lot. And, I realized, I just wear the same stuff. I'm wearing the same jeans. I'm down here in my freezing office. I'm wearing the same, old hooded sweatshirt. And, but then I was like, you know what? This is what I wanted. I just wanted to be me, right? Like, that's the whole point. But I was like, you know what? We're going back to the basics. I'm pulling out my Aldens, my old sweaters, the same Oxfords. But look, I still got some gnarly stuff here and there. I still got some pizzazz. It's good. I'm happy. You should do the same. But if you don't, I honestly don't care. You be you. But that being said, we got a rerun this week with an episode I'm sure many of you, I don't know, maybe you overlooked, especially if you're new here. This was a few years ago. And if you're in that new year that I'm going to educate myself moment still, I cannot think of any other episode as important as this one. Mr. Bruce Boyer. So I'm sure you've heard of him if you Google him. I mean, it's hard not to hear of him once you get into menswear and clothing. But Bruce, he's an authority on classic menswear and men's fashion. He would always say he's not a fashion writer. I want to be very clear. You'll hear it in the episode. I was re-listening to it. But he was an editor at GQ when GQ was writing more about clothes, less culture. No shots at them, but it was just at that time. He was an editor at Esquire. He's been writing about clothing and menswear for over 40 years. From Fred Astaire, Gary Cooper, Duke of Windsor, all that stuff. He's the dude. But one other thing I want to mention before you listen to us or before you fast forward or whatever, Bruce is the most genuine and real deal guy. Like, he used to just call me and just be like, how you doing? No bullshit. Like, he knows about cloth weight. He knows about all that stuff, but he also knows that at the end of the day, none of this really matters, because what matters is how you feel. I genuinely love this guy. I'm very privileged to call him a friend. We recorded this a few years ago, but I re-listened to it and I was like, damn, this is all bangers. So without further ado, let's get to it. Mr. Bruce Boyer. By the way, more new episodes coming soon. We'll see you soon. So Mr. Bruce Boyer, you were on the podcast. How are you?
Well, it's great to be here. I thought you'd never ask.
What?
Because, you've had all of my buddies on. Because I listened to you. Ethan Newton, Jake Grantham, and Sid Mashburn. I could go on. And But the reality is, I mean, I feel honored because I'm in such great company. I mean, those guys are. I wouldn't say they're idols because I don't know if I have any idols at my age, but they're all very astute people in the clothing business, and they're all nice guys too. You know, I mean, because I've known them personally. So,
well, I haven't even like begun to list your accomplishments, which is a mile long. And also, it's funny that you had said that, like, oh, you thought I'd never ask, because for me, I was like, would Bruce even want to do this? I was like, would Bruce? And I was like, all right, forget it. I'm just going to ask. And if he says no, I'll be like, oh, yeah, sure. You know, it's up to you.
Okay. So you were saving the best.
Yeah, yes. We're being very, very climactic here.
That's
but Bruce Boyer, your accomplishments and who you are in terms of a mentor to me, a barometer of what's good, an unbelievable writer and journalist, and I know that you'll correct me, and I've tried to do my research, as you have called yourself a clothing writer but not a fashion writer.
Yeah, that's true. I thought actually, I mean, you were getting so effusive there. I thought you were building up to asking me for a loan.
No.
But well, I'll tell you what I do. I mean, this is just one of my many little tricks.
Okay.
To make me appear interesting. When I'm with fashion people, I say I'm a writer. And when I'm with writers, I say I'm a fashion person. But the reality is that I'm not overly interested in fashion. Now, that's in the past 10, 20 years, that's been almost a cliche now to say, well, I'm anti-fashion,
right,
which is the fashion of the moment.
Yeah.
To be anti-fashion. But I've never been interested in fashion in the sense that, I don't sell clothes. I don't, when I write about clothes, I try to find out what's really interesting about them. The history, the sociology, the psychology, that kind of thing. I've never been a great one for the arts for art's sake philosophy of things. Things don't just jump out of the trees. They evolve. They're related to things. They have a history. Clothes have a past, So that's what interests me. I don't think you can find an article of mine or one of my books in which I say, take all your old stuff, go out in the yard and burn it and buy this new stuff.
Yeah.
That's not my thing. In fact, I've always been just the opposite. I've always said to guys, buy the best you can afford and keep it forever.
Right.
Don't let your wives or your girlfriends or whoever throw it away. Buy good stuff and keep it and take care of it and maintain it. It's a lot cheaper in the long run. I've often said that, I'd rather have one good pair of shoes than 6 cheap ones.
Right. Right.
So.
Well, I want to jump back to the beginning because, so first off, where are you from originally?
Well, I was born and bread and buttered, as they say, in a resort town at the southern end of New Jersey called Wildwood.
Okay.
In fact, they get like 1 million tourists or so every summer, but I think I was the only person who was ever born there.
Okay.
I spent the first couple years of my life there, and then my parents divorced, and my mother moved back to her original home and moved in with her parents, which was in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So I really grew up there. In fact, I would say that my extended family who lived in that region, my mother and my grandparents and my uncles and aunts and so forth, were the first great influence on my life and way of looking at things. And then secondly would have been the place where I grew up. Allentown is not quite, but roughly sits in the middle between Philadelphia and New York.
Mm-hmm.
So we had kind of the opportunity of being influenced by both cities.
Oh.
And it was a small city. I think the population was maybe 130,000 or so.
Okay.
And I thought it had all of the virtues of a city and none of the detractions. But I was very happy growing up where I was, and it had a great influence on my life because I grew up in I wouldn't say a poor neighborhood, but it was definitely blue collar.
Yeah, Allentown was a pretty blue collar place, right?
Blue collar place. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody remembers the Billy Joel song. But yeah, it was a blue collar. They were steel workers.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And it was a little rough, and it was a kind of place as people on the lower rungs of the ladder understand very well. Respect became an important part of your
Interesting.
life. You wanted to get respect.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the guys who were older than me, I watched them, and you could see that some of them got more respect than others, and in some cases it was because they were really tough guys. I mean,
Right.
you didn't fool around with them. But there were other guys who got a lot of respect, and you came to understand, or at least I did, that it was style. They dressed in a certain way. They talked in a certain way. They walked in a certain way. They combed their hair in a certain way. Whatever it was.
Right.
And those guys, I paid very close attention to. So, but anyway,
Interesting.
that's
Well, no.
growing up on the south side of Allentown.
Well, I think, I mean, that definitely, totally changes my path of questions to ask too, because, I mean, do you think that kind of helped influence your sort of like love and admiration of clothes, or did that not come until much later?
No, totally it did.
Yeah.
And from a very early age, my mother told me a couple of times, I think in exasperation later, but she said you always wanted to pick out your own clothes.
Interesting.
And I think that was true since I was about 5 years old.
Right.
I know that when I was just a child, she always wanted me to wear shorts like other little boys do.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have it because the older guys wore long trousers, and that's what I wanted to wear.
And you were going to get respect.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, I was a little skinny kid. I wasn't a good fighter.
Okay.
I wasn't a tough guy.
Did you get into fights, if you don't mind me asking?
A couple. I
Yeah.
carried a scar. I don't think it's there anymore, but I had a scar right up in the middle of my eyes, between my eyes. That lower forehead,
Sure.
where I was hit pretty hard with a baseball bat.
Oh my Lord, Bruce.
And well, that's the kind of place it was.
Right.
And but that didn't happen much. But yeah, you well, for me as a skinny little kid, you had to find ways to get respect, to get liked, to get the girls interested in you.
Sure.
Sure. So I found that a good way for me was clothing. In fact, I was a little later on when I was a teenager. My nickname was Slacksy.
Wait,
right? Just for Slacksy, and the reason was because I had so many pairs of trousers.
Interesting.
I mean, I was wearing banana yellow gabardines and electric blue.
Well, where were you getting these?
Oh, we had shops.
Okay.
We had
In
shops
Allentown, or were you going to New York?
absolutely. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. There were a dozen clothing stores, and yeah, you could get the stuff. I was a teenager just at the very end of the zoot suit phenomenon.
Okay.
So my first clothing was what I think of as prole gear, engineer boots, Levi's, black T-shirts, all the stuff that designers now have in their lines.
Right.
The roots of it are all in the early 50s.
Right.
In prole gear. So that was my first look. And then I when I was a little older, when we go to dances, we had kind of zoot suits.
Okay.
And then about 1955 or 56, 55, maybe even 54, Ivy League was the big thing.
Right.
And everybody burned their zoot suits and went out and got natural shoulder Harris tweed jackets and things. And then around 1957, 58, there was the British and the Italian influence. We called it at the time, and it was called by people in the clothing business, the continental look.
Interesting.
Early Brioni kind of stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, by the time I was 18, I had gone through all of that stuff.
Really?
All of it. Absolutely.
How are you funding this?
Well, I that's a good question. I'm trying to think. I probably did little odd jobs.
Right.
And I probably begged my mother and my grandparents a lot. And
Okay.
stuff. Yeah, no, it's a good question because I remember a good friend of mine, his mother worked in a clothing factory, and she would shift, under the table some shirts to us.
Oh, okay.
So it was that kind of thing, and
Sure.
and I had a cousin who was actually a month or two younger than I was, but he was bigger than I was. So I got his hand-me-downs.
Right.
And his mother worked in a clothing factory. There were a lot of clothing factories in the Lehigh Valley at that time. In fact, I'll give you just a little nugget.
Please.
Which you can use at the next party you go to break the ice. The Lehigh Valley in the early 20th century was the largest producer of silk in the world.
Really?
Yes. There were dozens of silk mills. Huh. My grandmother worked in one.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, there were clothing as late as the 1970s. There were clothing factories in and around Allentown.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Well, I want to jump. You had mentioned the Ivy Leagues.
Yes.
And I mean, if my knowledge is correct, you ended up attending the Ivy Leagues on your own, right?
Yes. Going to college was my intellectual awakening. I adored it. As much as I hated public school, I loved my college experience. I had the most wonderful professors. I had a dual major, English and philosophy, and I got straight A's in all of those subjects. I graduated the top 10 in my class, but I adored the teachers. They really wore the mantle of learning well.
Interesting.
They were just wonderful people, and I became friends with most of them. And in fact, after I graduated and went on to graduate school, one of the professors in the English department became ill, and they asked me if I would come back and fill in for him, take his courses, which
Oh my
I
God.
did. And it was just a great experience. It was my intellectual awakening, and I can't really thank them enough.
Wow.
It just is astounding. It was I don't know, what do you call it, an epiphany or
Yeah.
it was just wonderful.
Attention! Do you even loop wheel, bro? Do you know what loop wheel garments are? Look, I actually didn't, honestly. I was just like, oh, it's a flex, or it's this special kind of cotton. But no. The folks at Standard & Strange dropped a ton of incredible knowledge bombs and their incredible loop wheel tee, made in Japan, of course. Back to loop wheel. It's an antique circular knitting machine that relies on gravity and uses spring-bearded needles. What the heck? Do you even get it? Look, all you need to know is it's dope. It's better. If you want to learn more, visit standardandstrange.com/loop wheel and check out their new loop wheel tees. Your boy is partial to yellow because, duh. But the tees are fire no matter what color. The fit is spot on, and it's a classic tee that looks like it's from every era, to be honest with you, and fits like a dream. And it's from the folks at Standard & Strange, the shop that helps you own fewer, better things, run by industry vets who are focused on incredible product from incredible vendors. And look, if that's not your vibe, check out some of their huge offerings of Japanese denim or boots. But listen, the shirts, fam, the shirts. So, if you want to know more, visit standardandstrange.com. Loop wheel, baby. That's standardandstrange.com.
That's incredible. And so you basically go through the educational system, become on your way to become a professor.
Yes.
And then there's this moment that hits where after about 7 years, you're like,
yes.
no.
Yes.
What can you talk about that?
It's funny, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
You think, what the hell is wrong with this guy? It took him 7 years to figure out, that he wasn't very good at what. Well, I think I was a very good teacher,
Okay.
but you can't teach on that level without being a scholar too.
Mm.
It's kind of like sin and confession,
Okay.
but you really do. And I love teaching, but I really wasn't a good scholar.
What makes a good scholar?
Well, I think you have to have a great tolerance. Somebody once said that talking about doing research into the history of the English aristocracy, that what was so interesting about the English aristocracy is that they never threw away a boring letter. Now that gives you some idea.
Yeah.
If you want to spend 15 years reading boring letters to find that one little nugget
Right.
about John Milton's life that nobody discovered before,
Sure.
and I just I wasn't good for spending a lot of time in the library and doing that kind of stuff.
What were you spending your time on then?
Well, I guess. Well, let me see. Let me go back.
'Cause I know you got really into music.
Well,
Jazz
that's
specifically.
that's exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
To go back a minute, I would say, and this gives you an indication too of growing up on the south side of Allentown, that by the time I was 14 or 15, I would say all of my tastes were completely formed. Completely. In fact, I wonder sometimes if I've learned anything since then. I'm serious. My love of clothing and style and my great love of music, of dancing, uh, reading, great love of the word.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things, I think, were completely set and established in me by the time I was 14 or 15. So when I was in college and even in graduate school, I was still going out a couple of nights a week to the great bars around town, the great saloons, where they had some great bands, rock bands, jazz bands, that kind of thing. We had, in fact, and I think I've written about this. There were a couple of ballrooms in Allentown that had been built in the big band era, you know, for dances, and they were converted to disc jockeys playing records and for teenagers and things like that. But you would also every once in a while get a live band. In those early rock years, I heard Little Richard and Fats Domino and Bill Doggett and even guys like Louis Armstrong and things and his all-star group and things like that. Yeah, they would just show up every once in a while, and it was wonderful. And I'm not sure why, but I think it was because we were situated between Philadelphia and New York that
a good stopping
for
point.
some reason we heard all of that music.
Right.
I mean, we were aware of Latin music, of Tito Puente, for example. We danced to him, and Pres Prado and stuff like that, the merengue, mambo, cha-cha. And then we were aware of jazz. It was in 1956 or 57, I would say, that I discovered one of the great loves of my life, Nina Simone.
Oh, right.
I mean, I heard I Loves You, Porgy, and I was gone. Really? I mean, she was just such an incomparable artist. My God, just incredible.
So you're 7 years into your college career, and now did you just decide I want to write about clothes and then walk away? I mean, what was that conversation?
Well, what it was in the seventh year, wherever you are teaching, the decision has to be made by the administration whether to give you tenure or not.
Oh,
see,
okay.
So I had done all of my coursework, I think, for the PhD, but I was completely sick of grad school at that point.
Right.
And I suspected I wasn't going to finish, meaning that I wasn't going to take the exam, the final exam. I wasn't going to do the dissertation and whatever else there was left. And I was candid about that with the administration, and they told me, well, we can't give you tenure, without what we jokingly call the terminal degree.
Right.
Meaning you get it and then you're intellectually dead from that for the rest of your life, I guess. But anyway, so at the end of that spring semester, my college career at that place was over, and I didn't know what to do. But it was 1972, I think.
Okay.
The Duke of Windsor had just died. And I had long before this a fascination with him because, well, I mean, first of all, he was the only king I knew of that abdicated. I mean, And I always assumed that politicians would sell their wives to be elected.
Sure.
And he was doing the opposite.
Yeah.
He was giving up the world's largest empire for a woman. Strange. On the other hand, and not on the other hand, but also he was this incredible style setter. I mean, he was the most photographed man in the first half of the 20th century.
Really?
There were guys that had orders with their tailors to make every suit that he was photographed in.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he was a real. We forget today because we've gone on to other things, but he was the great salesman of the British Empire. On the other hand, and this is, I guess, what I found fascinating too. I mean, he had a reputation for being a nasty, wee little man.
I've read that too.
Yeah. He was parsimonious and he was elitist and
kill your idols type thing.
Yeah,
you're like, wow, you're great, but maybe.
Yeah. So I mean, even if he had these other virtues, he had huge clay feet.
Okay.
But anyway, so he died, and every magazine had an article about him, and I read these things. And in fact, I had read over the years everything that he wrote. Well, that he dictated to a writer.
Sure.
He didn't write it himself. But I read, I had read that stuff, and then I read all of these articles when he died, and I thought, nobody really pinned this guy.
Interesting.
It was just isn't it romantic? He gave up an empire for love and all of that. It was it was all a lot of clouds and lace with not a lot of anything else to
Sure.
it. So I said, well, I've got a lot of time on my hands. I was out of a job and didn't know what I was doing. And so I sat down and I wrote my ideas about Windsor and what he was. I tried to approach him through his sense of style and so forth. And so I had an article of about 4,000 or 5,000 words. I didn't know what to do with it. And I said, well, I'm gonna see if I can get it published in a magazine. My favorite magazine at the time was Town and Country, because it had great cachet at that time. It really was. It was the second oldest magazine in the country after Harper's Weekly, I think, and it just did great articles and. It was really the last of the great society magazines and so forth. So I said, well, I could maybe I could get them interested, or maybe Esquire, which in the 70s was still had that cachet about it too, of being a great magazine. And then thirdly, I thought about Playboy. And the reason I thought about Playboy was not the centerfolds, but because somebody had told me that they paid 2 or 3 times more than anybody else.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that sounded like something I could work with.
Right.
So I sent a query letter to Town and Country, and in about a week, they got back to me and said, "Yeah, we'll look at it." So I sent the piece off. And in about another week, I got a letter back saying, "We'll buy it."
Wow!
And it had taken me a month to write the piece. As soon as I heard that, I sat down, and within a week, I wrote another piece. Right. And I said, "Would you look at this one too?" And they said, "Yeah, sure." So they looked at that one, and they said, "Yeah, we'll buy this one too. And would you come to New York and talk with us?" They had just gotten, about 2 years before, a new editor-in-chief, a wonderful man, a truly iconic figure in not in men's magazine, in magazines generally. Man's name was Frank Zachary. And he was already at that time a legend in magazines.
Wow.
And he was a wonderful editor for magazines because he didn't insist on a house style. He was interested in new things. So I met with him and the features editor and the managing editor, and they all said, we've never done menswear before because we find men's fashions a little effeminate, and nobody knows how to write about it, And they said, but we think you found a way, because you bring your academic interest to it. I still think I'm the only guy who can write an article about the Blazer or something and quote Byron,
right? Yeah,
or refer to or refer to Chaucer or something like that.
Right.
I really think I did start that kind of writing, because fashion writing generally at that time was get rid of your old wardrobe and buy this.
Right.
I mean, it was little more than caption writing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make it important because I thought it was important. My personal history told me it was important.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to write about it more realistically in that sense. And they liked that. So they hired me on the spot to do a men's feature article every other issue.
Wow.
And I'll tell you a quick story.
Sure.
I was so delighted. I was so off my feet that at that time there was a very good department store right across from the Town and Country offices called Bonwit Teller, and they had a men's shop in there, very exclusive, very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I went out of the Town and Country offices, walked across the street, walked into the men's shop, and bought a Turnbull and Asser suit.
Oh my God.
Tweed suit.
Upgrade the job, upgrade the gear.
And I mean, to make this even more outlandish, as the guy was measuring my inseam, I realized I hadn't asked them at Town and Country how much I was getting paid.
Oh, whoops.
So I probably blew, 3 or 4 essays salary on that suit without even thinking about it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was frightening, but it was elating. It's I don't know what to compare it to, but it was frightening and elating, and I was completely out of touch with reality on any level.
I mean, I think it goes to show that like you were also the right person for the job, because I think oftentimes when people are writing about stuff, and also because journalists and writers usually have to cover such a wide range of topics.
Yes.
Sometimes you're kind of a jack of all trades and master of none.
Right.
But with you, I mean, if I know that you said that you're not the first, menswear like journalist, but like
right.
You are to me and everyone else because of not just your style, but the pure knowledge and insight that was gained from reading each thing. Because in most cases, I read your stuff. I mean, you have, your Fred Astaire books and all these, books about people that you've done. And then obviously True Style, which is my favorite in your most recent book. I learned from it, but it's also very, very entertaining. And I think from my background of trying to be some sort of armchair historian with like, World War II era stuff, it's not very entertaining as, it's just informative. And I think you were that writer that bridged the gap between informative writing, but also really entertaining.
Well, I consciously try to do that's a conscious thing on my part. In my writing, I tried to find that fine line between, that it's overwhelmingly important and that it's not important at all. That's the one thing. And the other thing I consciously work at is I try to give people a good read. When I write something, I may, I don't know who said it, but I think it's perfectly true. There is no such thing as writing. There's only rewriting. So everything I write it 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I wrote a short fiction piece years and years ago for the New Yorker that I think I wrote it 12 times.
Really? Before
I got it where I wanted, and before the editor at the New Yorker got it, where it was where he thought it was. Yeah, that's part of it. And quite frankly, I gotta tell you that I wallow in that.
Really?
I love rewriting.
Are you your harshest critic?
Pardon me?
Are you your harshest critic?
No, I think my wife probably is, because my wife is a very good editor.
Oh,
she edits me sometimes, and
Okay.
she's very good. She's kind, but she's strict.
Interesting.
So, we have a perfect marriage because I'm a pretty good writer and a lousy editor, and she's a very good editor and a lousy writer. So
There you go.
We get along perfectly. But no, I wallow in rewriting because I always think that the thing about writing is to, at first, get it down as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
If you get an idea in the middle of the night, write it down, because by the morning you'll have forgotten it or it won't mean what it did then or whatever. But I always try to get a piece down. If I can't find the right word, I'll either put, whatever word is closest or leave it blank or whatever. Then when I come back to look at the piece, then I can take my time. I'll take a half an hour longer to find that right word.
Yeah.
Let's say, I write the word fire down, but it wasn't really a fire. It was bigger than that. So it'll take me a little while, but eventually I'll come to the word conflagration.
Whoa.
That's the right word.
Right.
And I think, I just think that's important. You want to get the right word. And, if you're a writer and you don't want to do that, you must be a masochist, because, why would you, want to write if you didn't love that kind of thing, getting the right word in the right rhythm. The other thing that, I don't take any credit for, I suspect it's because I've always read a lot. I remember my mother saying when I was just a young child, you must learn to read and love books because then you'll never be alone.
Oh, wow.
And it's true. It's
Yeah.
true. So I have to give her credit for that. But I'm lucky. I take no credit for it. I have kind of a natural ear for the rhythm of a sentence. I can tell when it needs another beat, another syllable, another adjective.
Right.
I think because people tell me you read so easily, it just kind of slides along.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's because I just have an ear for it. I don't so much as see words as hear them.
Do you read your pieces out loud to yourself ever?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
yes. If I'm in doubt
Okay.
of the sentence, I'll
Right.
read it out loud
Mm.
and ponder it. And so, but yeah, because that's important. I want to give people a good read. I think the best compliment I get is from a guy who will say, I don't really care that much about clothes. I certainly don't read about clothes. It's not, a priority with me. But I thought your book was interesting. It was a good read, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
That's true.
And I think that's the best compliment you can get.
Yeah. I want to jump to your research, because you have written for me, like the definitive guide. I mean, your knowledge of Cary Grant is astonishing to me.
Yeah.
Fred Astaire.
Yeah.
Brando, like every single, like
Gary Cooper,
obviously. Yeah. Like every single, like male style icon of, the classic, age of style. But I mean, how did you go about researching some of these people? Because like Fred Astaire was relatively reclusive in a lot of his.
Well, this is going to sound obvious, but
Okay.
I'm a great believer in what I think technically is called iconography. You look at the pictures,
right?
Look at the pictures. I've for example, with Astaire, I've seen all of the films dozens of times, and then I look at the still photographs and so forth, and I do look at them with both a historic and a critical eye. What I mean by a historic is that I can look at the Astaire films chronologically and see the minute changes that he made in his style, in his wardrobe, in his clothes. The lapels widen a quarter of an inch and the jackets shorten a quarter of an inch, things like that. I'm very good at noticing things like that, and I can remember them. I don't know why. Again, it's not. It's If I weren't doing what I'm doing, it would be a totally useless talent. Because I can remember. If people don't believe me when I tell them, but I can remember every garment I've ever owned.
What?
In detail.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Well, there's no big market for it if you're not doing what I do.
That's very true.
I mean, it's completely useless and worthless and boring. But I've managed to make a living out of it.
There you go.
So, but if I look at Astaire or Cary Grant or anything, I can see the changes in their wardrobe, and then I look at the photos or whatever, and I analyze them and try to understand how things fit together.
Right.
How Astaire was able to get away wearing a chalk stripe formal double-breasted suit with a button-down collar,
right,
and suede shoes. And once you try to get at the man and what drove him to do what he did, then you start to understand these things. So, I guess I bring to the subject what I try to give to the reader. A sociological perspective or a psychological perspective or a historical perspective. In other words, I use my academic tools, the things that I've learned, to I try to bring it to bear on popular culture,
right,
and dressing and fashion and that. It's although I'm not, I don't pretend to be a serious fashion scholar. I don't bring that rigorous approach to it. As somebody like Christopher Breward, who is head of design at is it is a wonderful scholar. I mean, he could do and has done a history of the suit, which goes into to great academic detail with up to the eyebrows footnotes, and bibliography and everything. And I'm not that rigorous, but I try to do what, in fact, 18th century philosophers tried to do. 18th century philosophy was trying to make scientific discoveries intelligible to the average person. And I try to do that with clothing. I try to make what I've learned about clothing easily understandable to the reader, and particularly the reader who didn't think he cared about that at all.
Here's a question that maybe you can help me figure out too. So I, always loved and idolized Cary Grant and McQueen and Paul Newman and all those guys, but I still can't put my finger on why. And why is it that, men's fashion and, the style, have really put those people on a pedestal in terms of their appearance? And what is it about it?
Well, I think, you've used the proper elusive word, style, and
yeah, I guess so.
I'm not quite sure about it myself. I don't think I have anything definitive to say about it. It's certainly one of those terms, like love and freedom and courage and so forth, that's kind of ambiguous, except, ironically enough, we all know it when we see it.
Right.
We have a hard time saying what, as you point out, what is it? But yet we know it when we see it. I'll tell you, I was going to a shirt maker on 57th Street, Fred Calcagno, who had a company called Peck & Company, incredibly wonderful shirts. He made shirts for Cary Grant. He made shirts for a couple of other Hollywood guys. He made shirts for Nelson Rockefeller.
Wow.
And one guy he made shirts for, funnily enough, was Aristotle Onassis.
Wow.
Onassis never bought anything but white silk shirts. Well, that's fine. He knew what he looked good in and so forth. But anyway, so I met Onassis once up there. And Onassis was not a particularly good-looking guy in any sense of the word, and he was built like an egg. But man, did he look terrific.
Interesting.
White silk shirt, navy tie,
yeah,
gray chalk stripe, double-breasted suit, fitted him perfectly, made by Caracciani.
Yeah.
Oh, black polished shoes. And he was comfortable in those clothes. He knew that was, that was it. So it's got nothing to do with anything except, can you carry it off?
Wow. So we're starting to wrap up here, but I wanted to ask you to kind of come full circle here. As you're walking down the street, do you think that you, based on how you look and your appearance, do you think you've earned the respect of yourself and other people?
Yeah, I do. And I say this immodestly, because I don't think modesty is a big virtue anyway. I couldn't care less about that. Because I don't think I have any classic features of what you would call handsome in a guy. I mean, I'm short and bald and, everything else. But I think I know myself well enough. I know what I can wear. I know the kind of messages I send by my appearance. That it gives me confidence, gives me assurance, and also it makes me comfortable knowing that, and it makes other people comfortable.
The thing that I'm pulling though from the stuff that you're saying that's really causing me to like think about this deeper is also
that's why I'm here, Jeremy, to make you think.
The concept of dressing and to learn about yourself, because I think in me, and that's also why I asked you about the respect thing, not to be all philosophical, but more to feel if you've learned about yourself, because, you know, based on my experience, I would dress, you know, I've gone through various phases, but I would dress a certain way to just tell people that I'm okay, or to tell people that, hey, you should accept me, or you should respect me, or what are these things? But I think, you know, maybe not until the past couple of years did I start to dress in a way where I felt that, no, this is just who I am. Like, I love white tennis shoes. I always am going to wear white tennis shoes. That's what I'm the most comfortable in. That's going to be, you know, my thing. And through that, in a way that, like, when I am not so concerned about what I'm dressing, like that I feel like I've made these right choices, I'm actually able to be a better person to the other people that I'm interacting with. And I think that's something that you've kind of hinted at, but you're communicating that I never really digested until now.
Well, I think that's perfectly true. You know, I mean, when we're young, we're all insecure and we're all very vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're just a kid, you know, and you wear something that you think is cool, but a couple of your friends or somebody, you know, says to you, "Man, that's wrong." You know, that's just,
right.
That's just wrong. You know, you feel hurt.
Yeah.
You go home and you throw it in the back of the closet, you know, and you go on to something else. We're very vulnerable when we're young, but we get to a certain point, we start knowing ourselves, and, you know, you say, hey, I just love, you know, to wear tennis shoes, and that's my thing, you know, deal with it.
Yeah.
Deal with it. I don't really give a shit what you think. You know, this is me.
That's true.
You know,
well,
grow
Bruce,
a little.
Bruce, this was incredibly inspiring, and I can't thank you enough for your candor and the wisdom that you've imparted upon me, and hopefully other people listening to this. I truly means so much to me to chat with you.
My pleasure, Jeremy. It really has been.
All right, thanks.
You've been listening to Blamo. Our show is produced by Blamo Media. We're edited by Amar Lowell, and our theme music, as always, by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. If you like what you heard, you know the drill. Share the pod with a friend. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars or thumbs up on whatever other thing you're listening to us on, whether it's Dingledorp or Bing Bong, whatever it's called. But you can also follow us on Instagram for all the hot content. If you want to talk to us and give us your hot take, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at info@blamopod.com. Last but not least, super, ultra important, if I had an air horn, I would press it right now. You got to come and join us over on Patreon, because the fun never stops over there. Look, the live show, the free show, whatever you want to call this, we take breaks here and there, but Patreon, it never stops. And we also got exclusive shows like Die Workwear, hosted by Derek Guy and Peter Zotolo, and the Triple J Show, hosted by yours truly with John Moy and Gene DeLeon. There's just a ton of stuff over there. So check it out at patreon.com/Blamo. If not, no worries. We got hundreds and hundreds of free episodes in the feed, and more to come. So we will see you all soon.